My name is Edwin, and at 53 years old, I thought I had seen enough of life to never be surprised again. But then I watched the woman I had loved since high school get thrown out of her own home after 40 years of marriage. Her children turned their backs. Her in-laws took everything. She was left with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. But what none of them knew, not her children, not her in-laws, not even Margaret herself, was that her parents had left her something far more valuable than anyone could imagine. Before we begin, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe if you have not already. Now let me take you back to where this all began. I need to take you back to 1987 to a small town in Ohio, where the autumn leaves painted the streets gold and orange every October. That was the year I first noticed Margaret Henderson. We were both juniors at Lincoln High School, and I remember the exact moment I fell for her. She was sitting 3 rows ahead of me in English class, and when she turned around to pass back some papers, she smiled at me. Not the polite kind of smile you give to strangers. It was warm, genuine, like sunshine breaking through clouds after a long rain. Margaret was not the prettiest girl in our class. There were cheerleaders with perfect hair and bright lipstick who turned heads in the hallways. But Margaret had something they did not. Her eyes held a kindness that made you feel seen, truly seen, in a way that most people never bother to look at each other. When she laughed, it came from somewhere deep inside her, honest and unguarded. I was nobody back then. My father worked as a carpenter, coming home every evening with sawdust in his hair and calluses on his hands that never seemed to heal. My mother spent her days at the laundromat on 5th Street, folding other people's clothes for minimum wage. We lived in a small house on the wrong side of the tracks, and I wore hand-me-down jeans that were always an inch too short. But none of that mattered when Margaret smiled at me. For those brief seconds, I felt like maybe I could be somebody. Maybe I could be worthy of a girl like her. I spent months working up the courage to tell her how I felt. I wrote her a letter one night sitting at the wobbly desk in my bedroom while the radiator clanked and hissed. I poured my heart onto that paper, telling her things I had never told anyone. How her smile made my day better. How I dreamed about taking her to the movies and holding her hand in the dark. How I thought she was the most beautiful person I had ever known inside and out. But I never gave her that letter. I folded it up, stuck it in an old shoebox under my bed, and told myself I would give it to her tomorrow. Tomorrow came and went. So did the next day and the next. I was too afraid of rejection, too convinced that a girl like Margaret Henderson could never want a boy like me. Then Harold Whitmore showed up. The Whitmore family was the closest thing our town had to royalty. Harold's father owned 3 farm equipment stores and the biggest dairy farm in the county. They lived in a white colonial house on Maple Avenue with columns out front and a swimming pool in the back. Harold drove a cherry-red Mustang convertible to school, and when he walked down the hallways, people stepped aside like he was Moses parting the Red Sea. He set his sights on Margaret in the spring of our junior year. I watched him pursue her with the confidence of someone who had never been told no in his entire life. He brought her flowers. He took her to expensive restaurants in Columbus. He promised her a life of comfort and security, a life far removed from the modest farm where her parents raised chickens and grew vegetables. Margaret's parents, Samuel and Dorothy Henderson, were simple folks. They worked their land with their own hands, woke before dawn, and went to church every Sunday. When Harold Whitmore started courting their daughter, I saw the worry in their eyes. They knew something was off about him, the way parents sometimes sense things their children cannot see. But they loved Margaret too much to stand in her way. They trusted her to make her own choices. I will never forget senior prom. Margaret wore a blue dress that matched her eyes, and Harold wore a suit that probably cost more than my father made in a month. I stood in the corner of the gymnasium watching them dance, feeling my heart crack right down the middle. When Harold got down on one knee in front of everyone and proposed, the whole room erupted in cheers. Margaret said yes, with tears streaming down her face. I left that gymnasium and walked 3 miles home in the rain. The next week, I packed a bag and took a bus to Cleveland. I enrolled in a trade school, learned to be an electrician, and tried my best to forget about Margaret Henderson. The years passed. I got good at my work, earned my certifications, and eventually started my own company. I married a woman named Linda, a secretary I met at a job site. She was kind and patient, and she deserved better than a man whose heart was never fully hers. We were married for 15 years before we admitted to each other that we were better friends than lovers. The divorce was amicable. We stayed in touch. 5 years after we split, Linda called me to say she had been diagnosed with cancer. I moved back to help take care of her through the treatments. I held her hand in the hospital room when she took her last breath. She thanked me for being there, and I thanked her for giving me 15 years of her life, even if I could never give her all of me. Through all those years, I never stopped wondering about Margaret. Whenever I visited my mother in the old town, I would hear bits and pieces about her life. She had 3 children. She lived in the big Whitmore house. Her husband was a successful businessman. People said she had everything a woman could want. But people say a lot of things they do not really know. I moved back to Ohio after I retired early. The electrical business had been good to me, and I had enough saved to live comfortably without working another day. I found a small apartment near the center of town and settled into a quiet routine. Morning coffee at the diner, afternoon walks by the river, evenings reading books I had always meant to read but never found the time for. It was at the grocery store on a Tuesday afternoon when I saw her again. I was reaching for a can of tomatoes when I heard someone say my name. Edwin, is that you? I turned around, and there she was. 40 years had passed, but I would have recognized those eyes anywhere. They still held that same kindness, though now they were framed by lines that spoke of decades of living. Her hair had turned silver, but she wore it well. She was still beautiful to me, maybe even more so than before. We stood there in the canned goods aisle, staring at each other like 2 ghosts from another lifetime. Then she smiled, and I felt 17 again. We went for coffee at the little cafe on Main Street. Margaret ordered chamomile tea, and I got black coffee, and we sat by the window watching people pass by on the sidewalk. She asked about my life, and I told her about Cleveland, about Linda, about the business I built and sold. She listened with genuine interest, nodding at the right moments, asking questions that showed she actually cared about the answers. Then I asked about her life. She smiled again, but this time it did not reach her eyes. I have been blessed, she said. A beautiful home. 3 successful children. Harold has done well for himself. She said all the right words, but her voice was hollow. I have been around long enough to know when someone is reciting a script they have memorized, rather than speaking from the heart. I wanted to ask more, to dig deeper, but something in her expression told me she was not ready to share whatever was weighing her down. We exchanged phone numbers and promised to keep in touch. Over the following weeks, we met for coffee several more times. Each time, Margaret opened up a little more. It was like watching a flower slowly unfurl after a long winter. She told me things she said she had never told anyone else, and I realized that I was the only person in her life who simply listened without judgment. Harold, she explained, had never laid a hand on her. He was not that kind of man. His control was subtler, more insidious. He controlled the money. Every penny that came into their household went through him. Margaret had not had a bank account in her own name since the day they got married. When she needed something, she had to ask him for it. When she wanted to visit a friend, she needed his permission. She had not worked outside the home in 40 years. Harold said it was because he wanted to provide for her, wanted her to have a comfortable life. But the truth was that he wanted her dependent. He wanted to be the center of her world, the source of everything she had. And Margaret had given him everything in return. She raised their 3 children almost single-handedly, while Harold focused on building his business empire. She cooked every meal from scratch. She kept their massive house spotless. When Harold's parents grew old and frail, it was Margaret who bathed them, fed them, changed their sheets, and sat by their bedsides until they passed away. She did all of this without complaint, without pay, without even a thank you. Their children, she told me, had turned out successful by worldly standards. Thomas, the eldest, was a lawyer in Cleveland. Patricia was a doctor in Cincinnati. Daniel worked as a bank manager 2 towns over. But success had made them cold. They only called when they needed something. They only visited when they wanted money for a new car or a down payment on a house. They had inherited their father's sense of entitlement without any of their mother's warmth. One afternoon, Margaret told me about her parents. Samuel and Dorothy Henderson had passed away about 15 years earlier, within 2 years of each other. They had kept their little farm going until the end, even as their bodies grew weak and tired. Margaret's eyes filled with tears as she spoke about them. Harold had discouraged her from visiting them too often, always finding some reason why it was inconvenient, and there was a dinner party she needed to host. His mother needed help with something. The children had activities. By the time she realized how much time had slipped away, her parents were gone. Before my father died, Margaret said, holding her teacup with both hands, he told me something strange. He said, "We made sure you will always have a home, Margaret. Remember that." I did not understand what he meant. Harold told me they left everything to charity. He said the farm was sold to pay off debts. I never questioned it. I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers. I did not have words for what I was feeling. Anger at Harold. Sorrow for Margaret. And something else, a growing suspicion that things were not as they seemed. Harold Whitmore died on a Saturday morning in early April. He was playing golf with his business partners at the country club when he clutched his chest and collapsed on the 9th hole. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was gone. Margaret called me that night. Her voice was shaking so badly I could barely understand her words. I drove to the Whitmore house and found her sitting alone in the massive living room, surrounded by furniture that cost more than most people's cars. She looked so small in that enormous space, like a child lost in a museum after closing time. I stayed with her that night, sleeping on the couch in case she needed anything. Over the following days, I helped her navigate the chaos that comes with sudden death. The funeral arrangements, the endless phone calls, the visitors who dropped by with casseroles and condolences. Her children arrived 2 days after Harold died. Thomas flew in from Cleveland, Patricia drove up from Cincinnati, and Daniel came from his town 20 miles away. They swept into the house like a storm, taking over arrangements, making decisions without consulting their mother, barely acknowledging her existence except to ask where certain documents were kept. The funeral was a grand affair. Half the town showed up to pay their respects to Harold Whitmore, pillar of the community. Person after person stood at the podium and spoke about what a wonderful man he had been. A devoted husband, a loving father, a generous benefactor. I sat in the back row and watched Margaret nod politely at each speech, her face a mask of composure that hid whatever she was truly feeling. 2 weeks after the funeral, the lawyer summoned everyone to the house for the reading of the will. I offered to stay away, thinking this was a family matter, but Margaret gripped my arm and asked me to be there. So I sat in the corner of Harold's study while the Whitmore family gathered to hear their patriarch's final wishes. The lawyer, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, read the document in a monotone voice. To my son Thomas, I leave the family home and all its contents. To my son Daniel, I leave the business and its assets. To my daughter Patricia, I leave my shares in the investment portfolio. I watched Margaret's face as each item was listed. She sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, waiting. To my wife Margaret, the lawyer continued, I leave a cash sum of $50,000 to be paid out over a period of 6 months. Additionally, she may reside in the family home until such time as Thomas decides otherwise. The room went silent. $50,000. After 40 years of marriage. After 4 decades of cooking and cleaning and raising children and caring for his parents. Harold had left her enough to survive for maybe a year if she was careful, and then nothing. Thomas spoke first. Well, that seems fair. Dad worked hard for everything we have. Mom was taken care of while he was alive. Now it is time for us to manage the estate. Fair. The word hung in the air like poison gas. I gripped the arms of my chair to keep myself from saying something I would regret. Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. I do not understand. 40 years. I gave him 40 years. Patricia reached over and patted her mother's hand with the condescension of someone explaining something obvious to a child. Mom, you have to understand. This is just business. Dad built all of this. He had the right to decide what happened to it. Daniel said nothing. He just stared at the floor, unable to meet his mother's eyes. The days that followed were a nightmare. Thomas informed Margaret that he planned to sell the house. The real estate market was hot, he explained, and he could get top dollar if he moved quickly. He gave her 30 days to find somewhere else to live. Margaret protested. She reminded her children of everything she had sacrificed. The sleepless nights when they were sick, the meals she had cooked, thousands upon thousands of them, the dreams she had given up so that Harold could focus on his career while she focused on their family. She had never taken a vacation alone. She had never bought herself anything nice without asking permission. She had poured every ounce of herself into that family for 4 decades. Thomas cut her off mid-sentence. You were a housewife, Mom. That was your job. Dad was the one who paid for everything. We all appreciated what you did, but let us not pretend it was the same as actually earning money. I saw Margaret flinch like she had been slapped. I wanted to grab Thomas by his expensive tie and throw him out the window, but I knew that would only make things worse. So I stayed silent, clenching my fists in my pockets. Then Harold's sister showed up. Constance Whitmore was everything her brother had been amplified and concentrated into a single package of arrogance. She arrived in a Mercedes wearing jewelry that could have fed a family for a year and immediately began taking inventory of the house's contents. You know, she said to Margaret with a smile that did not reach her eyes, my brother was always too soft. He should have had you sign a prenuptial agreement. You were lucky he took you in. A farm girl with nothing to her name. You should be grateful for the years you had here. Margaret did not respond. She just stood there absorbing the blows, and I realized that she had spent 40 years training herself not to fight back. Constance gathered the children together and urged them to finalize the paperwork quickly. The sooner we get this settled, she said, the less chance there is for any complications. You know how these things can drag on if people start making demands. She looked directly at Margaret when she said that last part. The meaning was clear. The morning Margaret had to pack her belongings was one of the hardest days I have ever witnessed. Thomas had sent a representative from a moving company to supervise the process. His instructions were clear. Margaret could take her personal items, her clothing, and any objects that had no significant monetary value. Everything else belonged to the estate. I helped Margaret carry boxes from her bedroom to the rented van parked in the driveway. She moved through the house like a ghost, touching things she had lived with for decades, but could no longer claim as her own. A vase she had chosen for the living room, curtains she had sewn by hand, family photographs that hung on every wall. She stopped in front of a picture of the whole family taken at Christmas, about 10 years earlier. Everyone was smiling. Thomas had his arm around his father. Patricia was laughing at something Daniel had said. Margaret stood in the middle, surrounded by the people she had devoted her life to, and she looked happy. Genuinely happy. "That was the last Christmas before things started to change," she said softly. "They were still my children then. I do not know when I lost them." The representative cleared his throat. "Mrs. Whitmore, the photographs are technically part of the estate, but Mr. Thomas said you may take copies, not the originals." Margaret nodded without arguing. She had stopped arguing days ago. When we reached her bedroom, she wanted to keep a pearl necklace that Harold's mother had given her on her wedding day. Patricia appeared in the doorway as if summoned by radar. "Mom, that is a family heirloom. It belongs with the Whitmores." "But your grandmother gave it to me," Margaret said. "She pressed it into my hands and told me I was her daughter now." Patricia shook her head. "I am sorry, but the will is very specific about jewelry. Thomas already had everything appraised." Margaret handed over the necklace without another word. I had to leave the room because I could not trust myself to stay calm. Later that afternoon, we went down to the basement to look for any remaining personal items. The space was cluttered with decades of accumulated possessions. Old furniture covered in dust sheets, boxes labeled with faded marker, the remnants of a life measured in objects. In a far corner, hidden behind a stack of moldy cardboard boxes, Margaret found something that made her stop in her tracks. It was a wooden chest about the size of a small suitcase covered in dust and cobwebs. The wood was dark with age, but I could make out 2 initials carved into the lid. S.H. Samuel Henderson, Margaret's father. "What is this doing here?" Margaret whispered. "This was my father's. I remember it from when I was a little girl." She knelt down and brushed the dust away, her hands trembling. I helped her carry the chest upstairs. The representative glanced at it and shrugged. "Looks like junk," he said. "You can take it." We loaded the chest into the van along with everything else and drove to the small apartment I had rented for Margaret until she could figure out her next steps. It was getting dark by the time we carried the last boxes inside. We were both exhausted physically and emotionally drained. But Margaret could not wait to open the chest. She sat on the floor of her tiny new living room and lifted the lid with the reverence of someone opening a sacred text. Inside there were letters, dozens of them bound together with faded ribbons. There were photographs, 2 old black and white images of people and places from another era. And there was a large envelope yellowed with age resting at the bottom. Margaret opened the envelope first. Her hands shook as she unfolded the papers inside. I watched her eyes move across the words, watched her face transform from confusion to disbelief, to something that looked like shock mixed with hope. "Edwin," she said, her voice cracking. "Edwin, you need to read this." She handed me the papers. It was a legal document dated 22 years earlier, a last will and testament signed by Samuel and Dorothy Henderson, and it clearly stated that they were leaving a house and land at 147 Willow Creek Road to their beloved daughter Margaret, along with all contents within. There was a letter tucked behind the will, written in a shaky hand, that must have belonged to Margaret's father in his final years. "My dearest Margaret," it read. "Harold told us you did not want any inheritance. He said you wanted us to donate everything, but we could not believe our daughter would say that. So we bought this house secretly in your name only. The deed is with lawyer Benjamin Crawford in Columbus. We love you always. Your father." Margaret was crying now, tears streaming down her face as she held the letter against her chest. "All these years," she whispered. "All these years he lied to me. He kept me from my parents. He made me believe they left me nothing." I put my arm around her and let her cry. The full weight of Harold's betrayal was settling over us both. He had not just controlled Margaret's present, he had stolen her past. He had severed her from her parents, intercepted their love, and left her with nothing but the lies he wanted her to believe. But now finally, the truth was coming to light. The next morning, we drove to Columbus to find Benjamin Crawford. It took some searching because he had retired years ago, but we eventually tracked him down to a modest house in a quiet suburb. He was 80 years old now, with white hair and watery blue eyes, but his mind was still sharp. He remembered the Hendersons immediately. "Samuel and Dorothy," he said, shaking his head slowly. "Finest people I ever knew. They came to me about 22 years ago with a very specific request. They wanted to buy a property and put it entirely in their daughter's name, no one else's. They were very insistent about that." He led us into his home office where filing cabinets lined the walls. It took him about 20 minutes to locate the folder he was looking for. Inside was the original deed to 147 Willow Creek Road, clearly listing Margaret Henderson Whitmore as the sole owner. "I tried to contact you," Mr. Crawford said to Margaret. "After your parents passed away, I called the number they had given me. But a man answered. He said he was your husband. He said you did not want any contact regarding your parents' affairs. He said you had made peace with everything and did not wish to be reminded of the past." Margaret's face was pale. "Harold answered that call. He never told me." Mr. Crawford nodded sadly. "I should have tried harder. I should have insisted on speaking to you directly. But I was dealing with my own health issues at the time, and I let it slip. I have regretted that decision ever since." He handed Margaret the deed and all the associated paperwork. The property taxes had been paid automatically through a trust the Hendersons had established. Everything was in order. The house was hers free and clear. We thanked Mr. Crawford and headed for Willow Creek Road. It was about an hour's drive from Columbus through rolling hills and farmland that reminded me of the Ohio I grew up in. The GPS led us down a winding gravel road until we came to a wooden mailbox with the numbers 147 painted on the side. And there it was. The house sat on top of a gentle hill overlooking acres of green fields that stretched toward the horizon. It was a 2-story farmhouse built in the classic American style, with a wraparound porch and a swing hanging from the rafters. The white paint was faded and peeling in places. The garden had gone wild, but the bones of the house were solid, and the view was breathtaking. Margaret stood at the bottom of the hill for a long moment, just staring. I could not imagine what she was feeling. All those years believing her parents had left her nothing. All those years thinking they had chosen charity over their own daughter. And now this. We walked up the path together. The front door was locked, but Mr. Crawford had given us the key. It turned stiffly in the lock, and the door swung open with a creak that echoed through the empty rooms. Inside the house was like a time capsule. The furniture was covered in white sheets, and dust motes floated in the beams of sunlight coming through the windows. But everything was exactly as the Hendersons had left it, arranged with care and attention to detail. Margaret walked through the rooms, slowly touching things here and there. The walls were painted a soft green that I remembered her mentioning once was her favorite color as a girl. The curtains were printed with delicate flowers. There was a bookshelf made of solid oak filled with classic novels and collections of poetry. In the living room, she stopped in front of the fireplace. Above the mantel hung a framed photograph of her parents on their wedding day, young and hopeful and deeply in love. Next to it was a picture of Margaret as a little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old, standing in a field of sunflowers with a huge smile on her face. They remembered, she whispered. They remembered everything I loved. We found the wooden trunk in a corner of the living room, similar to the one we had discovered in the basement of the Whitmore house. Inside were more letters, these ones written over the years, but never sent. Letters from her mother talking about the garden and the neighbors and how much she missed her daughter. Letters from her father sharing wisdom about life and love and the importance of staying true to yourself. The last letter was dated just weeks before Samuel Henderson passed away. It was written in a hand that had clearly grown weak, the letters shaky and uneven. "My darling Margaret," it read. "I hope one day you will find this house and know how much we loved you. You were never alone. You were always in our hearts. This home is our gift to you. A place where you can always belong. No matter what happens, remember that your mother and I believed in you. We are so proud of the woman you became, even if we could not be there to watch you grow. All our love forever and always. Your father." Margaret held that letter for a long time, crying silently. I sat beside her and let her grieve, not just for her parents, but for all the years she had lost. All the time that had been stolen from her by a man she had trusted. When she finally looked up, there was something different in her eyes. The sadness was still there, but it was mixed with something else. Determination, maybe. Or resolve. "He took so much from me," she said quietly. "But he could not take this. He could not take their love." I helped her explore the rest of the house. Mr. Crawford had mentioned that the property had become quite valuable because it was located in an area that had been targeted for development. If Margaret wanted to sell, she could live comfortably for the rest of her life. But when I asked her about it, she shook her head immediately. "This is my parents' home," she said. "They built it for me. I am not selling it. I am going to fix it up and live here. I am going to sit on that porch swing and watch the sunset over those fields, just like my mother always dreamed of doing." I smiled and told her I would help. Whatever she needed, I would be there. Word travels fast in small towns. Within a week, news of Margaret's inheritance had reached her children. Thomas called first. His voice was different than it had been at the will reading. Softer. Friendlier. Almost sweet. "Mom," he said, "I heard you found some property that belonged to your parents. That is wonderful news. Why did you not tell us? We are family. We should be celebrating together." Margaret listened in silence, letting him talk. He went on about how happy he was for her, how he had always worried about her being alone, how he wanted to make sure she was taken care of properly. He even offered to help her manage the property, suggesting that she should consider selling it and investing the money wisely. She thanked him politely and said she would think about it. But when she hung up, I could see the disappointment in her eyes. Her son was not calling because he cared about her. He was calling because he had heard the land was valuable. Patricia showed up 2 days later with flowers and a box of chocolates. She had driven all the way from Cincinnati, she explained, because she wanted to apologize in person for any misunderstandings that had occurred during the estate proceedings. "I was just so overwhelmed by grief," Patricia said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Daddy's death hit me harder than I expected. I was not thinking clearly. I hope you can forgive me. Margaret accepted the flowers and the apology, but she did not invite Patricia to stay long. When her daughter asked about the house on Willow Creek Road, Margaret said simply that it was hers and she intended to keep it. Daniel's response came in the form of a 3-page email. He explained at length how he had always felt caught in the middle, how he had wanted to support his mother, but felt pressure from his siblings and his aunt. He acknowledged that his father had been a difficult man and that their family had its share of dysfunction. He asked if they could start fresh, maybe have dinner sometime, and really talk. Of all 3 children, Daniel's message seemed the most sincere. Margaret read it several times before responding with a brief note saying she appreciated his words and that perhaps they could talk someday when she was ready. But the person who showed up next was not one of Margaret's children. It was Constance Whitmore. She arrived at the Willow Creek house in her Mercedes, parking it in the gravel driveway like she owned the place. Margaret and I were on the porch, taking a break from the repairs we had been working on when she got out of her car and marched toward us with purpose. I have consulted with my attorneys, Constance announced without preamble. This property may be subject to marital asset claims. You were married to my brother for 40 years. That means anything acquired during your marriage could legally be considered joint property. Margaret stood up slowly. She was holding a paintbrush in one hand, her old clothes spattered with white primer. She did not look like someone ready for a legal battle. But when she spoke, her voice was calm and steady. This property was purchased by my parents before they died, Margaret said. It was placed in my name alone. It has nothing to do with Harold or his estate. Constance smiled the way a snake might smile if snakes could smile. My lawyers will be the judge of that. Margaret looked at her for a long moment. Then she said something I will never forget. You know, Constance, I spent 40 years being quiet. 40 years keeping the peace, avoiding conflict, letting other people make decisions for me. I raised 3 children who learned to treat me like furniture. I buried my in-laws while your brother played golf. I cooked 10,000 meals that no one ever thanked me for. I gave up everything, and in the end, I was given almost nothing. She paused and took a breath. But I am done being quiet. This house belongs to me. My parents left it for me because they loved me, and I will not let anyone take it away. Not you, not your lawyers, not anyone. Constance opened her mouth to respond, but Margaret was not finished. You can threaten me all you want, Margaret continued. But I have a lawyer too, and he has already confirmed that this property was legally transferred to me before I ever married your brother. There is no marital claim. There is no estate claim. There is nothing for you here except disappointment. The lawyer I had hired for Margaret had indeed confirmed everything she said. The deed was airtight. The trust was properly executed. Harold had known about the property for years and had deliberately hidden it from his wife, but he had never had any legal claim to it. Constance stared at Margaret for a long moment, her face cycling through several shades of red. Then, without another word, she turned and walked back to her car. She drove away in a cloud of gravel dust, and we never saw her again. The following weekend, Margaret invited all 3 of her children to the Willow Creek house. She told them she had something important to say. They arrived separately, eyeing each other with the suspicion of people who know they are competing for something. I stayed in the background, close enough to be supportive, but far enough to let Margaret handle things her way. She led them on a tour of the house, showing them the rooms her parents had decorated with her in mind. She showed them the letters, the photographs, the evidence of a love that had persisted even when Harold had tried to destroy it. She showed them the final letter from her father, the one that spoke of pride and belief and forever love. Then she sat them down in the living room and told them the truth about their father. Not in anger, not in bitterness. Just the simple facts. How he had controlled her for 40 years. How he had cut her off from her parents. How he had lied about their will and stolen the one connection she had left to them. She told them about the letter from her father, the one that said Harold had claimed Margaret did not want any inheritance. She watched their faces as they realized what their father had done. Patricia started crying, real tears this time, not the performative kind she had shown before. "I did not know," she said. "I swear I did not know." Daniel nodded slowly, his expression troubled. "I always wondered why you never talked about Grandma and Grandpa. Dad said it was too painful for you. But it was him, was it not? He made it painful." Thomas remained silent, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the floor. Whatever he was feeling, he kept it hidden. Margaret looked at her children with an expression I can only describe as compassionate exhaustion. "I am not telling you this to make you hate your father," she said. "He is gone now. Nothing can change what he did. I am telling you this because I want you to understand who I am, what I survived, and what I will not tolerate anymore." She leaned forward, her hands clasped in front of her. "This house is mine. It will always be mine. I am not selling it. I am not sharing it. I am going to live here and fix it up and spend whatever years I have left surrounded by the love my parents left for me. You are welcome to visit if you want to have a real relationship with me. Not because of what I can give you, not because of what you can get from me, but because you actually want to know your mother." She paused and looked at each of them in turn. "I love you. I will always love you. But I have learned that loving someone does not mean letting them hurt you. If you want to be part of my life, it has to be on terms that respect who I am. Not who your father wanted me to be. Not who Aunt Constance thinks I should be. Me." The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Patricia stood up and walked over to her mother. She knelt down and took Margaret's hands in hers. "I am sorry, Mom," she said. "I am so sorry for everything. I want to know you, the real you, if you will let me." Daniel came over too, his eyes red with unshed tears. He put his hand on his mother's shoulder and nodded, unable to speak. Thomas stood apart from them, his expression unreadable. Finally, he cleared his throat. "I need some time," he said. "This is a lot to process." Margaret nodded. "Take all the time you need," she said. "The door will be open when you are ready." Thomas left without saying goodbye, but Patricia and Daniel stayed for dinner. We ordered pizza because the kitchen was still not fully functional, and we sat on the porch watching the sun set over the fields while the crickets started their evening symphony. It was not a perfect ending. It was not even close. But it was a beginning. The weeks that followed were filled with work and healing, often happening at the same time. Every morning, I would drive to the Willow Creek house with coffee and pastries from the bakery in town. Margaret would meet me on the porch, and we would sit together watching the mist rise off the fields before the day's labor began. We repainted the entire house inside and out. We replaced the rotted boards on the porch. We cleared the overgrown garden and planted new flowers. We fixed the plumbing and updated the electrical system. Every task was a small act of reclamation, a way of honoring the love that Samuel and Dorothy Henderson had poured into this place. Margaret spent hours reading her parents' letters. Some days she would share passages with me. Other days she would sit alone by the window and read in silence, her cheeks wet with tears. It was not easy for her to process everything she had lost. 40 years of manipulation. Decades of isolation from the people who loved her most. The knowledge that her husband had deliberately destroyed her connection to her own family. But slowly, day by day, I watched her heal. The stiffness in her shoulders began to soften. The worry lines on her face grew less pronounced. She laughed more often, sometimes at silly things I said, sometimes at memories that surfaced unexpectedly. Patricia called every week, sometimes just to chat, sometimes to ask for advice on her own life. Their relationship was rebuilding itself from the ground up, no longer based on obligation or inheritance, but on genuine connection. Daniel visited once a month. He brought his wife and children, introducing them properly to their grandmother for the first time. Margaret's grandchildren ran through the fields and climbed the old oak tree in the backyard, while the adults sat on the porch and talked about nothing important. It was exactly the kind of ordinary happiness that had been missing from Margaret's life for so long. Thomas remained distant. He sent a card on Mother's Day with a generic message and his signature at the bottom. Margaret put it on the refrigerator anyway. She was willing to wait. One evening in late autumn, when the leaves were turning gold and the air had that crisp bite that signals the coming winter, Margaret and I sat on the porch swing watching the sunset. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink and purple, and the fields below us glowed like they were lit from within. "I have something to tell you," I said, my heart beating faster than it had in years. Margaret turned to look at me, her eyes curious. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellowed and worn with age. I had carried it with me for weeks, waiting for the right moment. "When we were 17, I said I wrote you a letter. I was going to give it to you at prom, but I was too scared. I thought you deserved someone better than me. So I kept it, and I have been keeping it ever since." I handed her the paper. She unfolded it carefully, her eyes moving across the words I had written more than 35 years ago. Her lips curved into a smile as she read, and when she reached the end, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "You loved me," she said. "Even then." I nodded. "Even then. And every day since." She reached over and took my hand in hers. We sat there together as the last light faded from the sky, and I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. Peace, contentment, hope. We did not rush into anything. At our age, there is no need for that. But over the following months, we grew closer. I moved out of my apartment and into the Willow Creek house. We had separate bedrooms at first, then not. We took things one day at a time, treasuring each moment without worrying about the future. Looking back now, I realize that the hardest part of this journey was not the betrayal or the loss or the struggle to reclaim what had been stolen. The hardest part was learning to let go of the past and trust that the future could be different. Margaret taught me that. She showed me that it is possible to survive 40 years of manipulation and still emerge with your dignity intact. She proved that the love of good parents can reach across decades and death to save their child. And she demonstrated that it is never too late to start over, to rebuild, to find happiness in unexpected places. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had given her that letter all those years ago. Would we have ended up together from the start? Would we have built a life without all the pain and loss that came between us? But then I look at Margaret, sitting on the porch swing, her parents hung for her, reading one of their letters for the 100th time, smiling at some memory they shared. And I realize that some stories are meant to take the long way home. The Whitmore children never stopped being complicated. Thomas eventually came around enough to attend Christmas dinner, though he remained stiff and formal. Patricia became a regular presence in our lives, finally understanding what it meant to have a mother rather than just a caretaker. Daniel continued to bring his family, and Margaret's grandchildren grew to love the farmhouse as much as she did. As for Constance Whitmore, we heard she had some financial troubles of her own a few years later. Her lawyer's fees had apparently added up. Margaret did not gloat. That was not her way. She simply noted the news and went back to tending her garden. The house at 147 Willow Creek Road stands as a testament to enduring love. Every repaired board and fresh coat of paint honors the sacrifice Samuel and Dorothy Henderson made for their daughter. Every sunset watched from the porch swing fulfills the dream they had when they bought this place so many years ago. And every morning when I wake up beside the woman I have loved since I was 17 years old, I am reminded that the best things in life are worth waiting for. Now I want to ask you something before we part ways today. Have you ever experienced a situation where someone you trusted betrayed you only to discover later that others had been protecting you all along? Have you found unexpected blessings in your darkest moments? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Subscribe to this channel if you have not already, so you do not miss the next story. And remember, no matter how dark things might seem, love has a way of finding us when we least expect it. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope you carry a little piece of Margaret's courage with you as you go about your day. May you always find your way home to the people who truly love you. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.